Every single one of Ted's breakups was actually a success. Every failed relationship quietly destroyed one lie he believed about love, until Tracy met the version of Ted that was finally real. We always debate who his best girlfriend was, but watching it back recently, a totally different thought hit me. What belief did each ex have to break in him before he was actually ready? I'm curious to know, though, which breakup hit you the hardest, so drop your take below as we go. But to understand where Ted actually started, we have to look at Robin. The blue French horn is usually the first thing that comes to mind with Ted and Robin. It stops being just a stolen horn and becomes the symbol of Ted trying to force destiny. The whole scene feels like a promise. If you love someone hard enough and keep showing up, it has to work out. Ted genuinely believed that. You see it every time he runs back to her. But it never actually works. Nothing changed. Robin still doesn't want kids or marriage, and Ted still needs both. A lot of fans call them soulmates who met at the wrong time. But what if timing was just an easy excuse? It's a lot easier to blame bad timing than to admit two people can care deeply about each other and still want entirely different lives. That's when Robin's role clicked for me. She wasn't there to teach him how to love. She was the first person to prove that love doesn't fix a core incompatibility. No grand gesture can rewrite what someone wants out of life. And that's brutal to accept, because it means there wasn't some huge mistake to fix or one final conversation that would turn things around. Sometimes a relationship ends simply because neither person is wrong. We've all held on to the idea that if we just pushed a little harder, the future would sort itself out. But effort can't replace having the same destination. Robin had to break Ted's first big delusion. Love, on its own, isn't always enough. Victoria is pretty much the easiest person to call the one that got away. Not because they were perfect, but because what they had actually felt natural. It was playful, simple, and romantic. The exact dynamic you automatically root for. So when she comes back years later, it feels like the writers are handing him a second chance. Honestly, the first time I watched this, I was convinced she was the mother. Even Robin ranks Victoria as his best girlfriend. Yet their second shot still falls apart. Right before they get married, Victoria gives him an ultimatum. He can't be friends with Robin. Looking back at that scene now, Victoria wasn't really competing with Robin the person. She was competing with what Robin represented. Ted wasn't choosing between two women. He was choosing between a real, working relationship in front of him and a fantasy he couldn't let go of. That's why Victoria's exit hurts so much. She didn't lose because she was flawed. She lost because Ted still had one foot in a story he refused to bury. He kept saying he'd moved on, but when someone asks you to close a door and you refuse, you're still standing in the hallway. A lot of us do this. We lose great people not because the relationship is bad, but because we're emotionally tethered to a vision of how we thought our life was supposed to look. Victoria forced Ted to face a hard truth. Even with the right person, you still have to actively choose them. And he couldn't do it. Stella is remembered as the runaway bride. Ted stands there in a suit, ready for what should be his big moment, and she just doesn't show up. It's still painful to watch because, for once, Ted did everything right. He was grounded, committed, and stopped chasing impossible dreams. So when Stella leaves him at the altar, it doesn't feel like a standard breakup. It feels like a personal rejection from the universe. But rewatching the buildup, The 2-minute date, the rushed proposal, Ted bending over backward to move to New Jersey and fit into her life. You see what was really happening. Ted wasn't just falling for Stella. He was obsessed with the idea that he'd finally arrived. He felt he'd put in the work, suffered enough, and grown up, so life owed him a happy ending. And that's where it collapsed. Stella's storyline isn't just about betrayal. She forces him to confront a frustrating reality. Being ready doesn't mean life is on your schedule. We've all been there. You do the internal work, you're patient, you fix your issues, and things still fall apart. Your immediate gut reaction is, "Are you serious?" It feels unfair. But personal growth isn't a transactional trade. It doesn't speed up the clock or reserve your spot. Ted had to learn this lesson the hard way. Just because you're finally ready for love doesn't mean love is ready to show up. Ted and Zoey are the classic enemies to lovers to enemies dynamic. It's chaotic and exciting. They bicker over the Arcadian, push each other's buttons, and can't stay apart even when it makes zero practical sense. TV trains us to root for that high-octane, opposites attract energy. But watching it again, the illusion wears off fast. They never actually stop fighting. The spark pulling them together is literally the friction driving them apart. The attraction is real, but the moment the relationship has to exist in everyday reality, they hit a brick wall. The Arcadian wasn't just an external issue. It was proof they were pulling in completely opposite directions. It's easy to get fooled here, because we're taught to trust chemistry above everything else. If you're up until 3 a.m. talking and the dynamic is electric, you assume that means you're meant to be. Usually, it just means you have good dynamic tension. Sometimes the strongest chemistry comes from the chase, from fighting to align with someone who doesn't fit into your life. It's easy to mistake that constant intensity for true connection. Zoey dismantled a major delusion for Ted. Having crazy chemistry with someone doesn't mean you share a life path. Most fans brush Janette off as just the crazy ex. But there's something much darker happening here that I completely missed at first. By season 8, Ted isn't even acting like himself. He's making desperate choices. Jeanette literally admits to stalking him through a newspaper article, and Ted just rolls with it. Not because it makes sense, but because he's completely burned out. Every vision he had for his life has crumbled, and finding a partner stopped being about love. It became about stopping the loneliness. That's why Janette actually matters. She doesn't break his heart. She holds up a mirror to how low his standards have dropped. I used to think she was just filler before Tracy, but she marks the exact moment Ted stopped searching for love and started searching for relief. And those are two very different things. It's a terrifyingly relatable spot to be in. You get so obsessed with reaching a specific life milestone that you stop caring if the situation actually makes sense. It looks like commitment from the outside, but inside, it's just panic. Janette had to happen right before Tracy. Ted didn't need another heartbreak. He needed a wake-up call. The guy who used to hold out for the one was now accepting toxic behavior just to avoid starting over. She broke his final toxic belief, that finding anyone is better than being alone. Ted spent years hoping a relationship would fix his identity, but Janette proved he had to fix himself first. When Ted finally meets Tracy, it's surprisingly understated. After 9 seasons of yellow umbrellas, missed trains, and crazy grand gestures, you kind of expect this massive cinematic moment. Instead, it's just 2 people standing on a train platform, chatting like they've known each other forever. I used to think Tracy was presented as a reward, the ultimate payoff for everything Ted endured. But on a rewatch, the dynamic looks different. Tracy isn't there to fix Ted. She doesn't have to talk him out of his Robin obsession or teach him how to grow up. All that painful, heavy lifting was already done, piece by piece. By the time they meet, Ted isn't trying to prove he's worthy of love anymore. He's just ready to actually share his life with someone. That's why the whole relationship feels like a breath of fresh air. There's barely any emotional friction, no constant question of whether they're actually meant to be together. It feels effortless because Tracy didn't transform him. She met the man his past breakups had already built. We constantly fall for the trope that the right person will fix our broken parts. But real growth usually happens quietly in the background, long before they ever arrive. Ted's journey wasn't about finding Tracy. It was about becoming someone who could actually hold on to her without destroying it. Looking back at the whole series, Ted's failed relationships were never roadblocks. They were the preparation. Each ex stripped away a specific delusion he held about love. Robin broke the idea that love alone conquers incompatibility. Victoria broke the myth that you can build a future while clinging to the past. Stella broke the belief that being ready forces life's timeline. Zoey broke the illusion that intensity equals compatibility. And Jeanette broke the dangerous idea that any relationship is better than being alone. By the time Ted met Tracy, there wasn't much left to prove. He wasn't looking for someone to complete the story he'd been imagining since the pilot. He wasn't trying to make a fantasy finally come true. He was finally ready to love someone for who they were instead of who he needed them to be. Maybe that's the real takeaway of How I Met Your Mother. It was never just the story of how Ted met Tracy. It was the story of how every painful goodbye quietly made that meeting possible.